testing this to make sure it's going live. We're having some technical difficulties, but we're working to get everybody back on. I do apologize. Um, this is crazy. So it's gonna be a weird one. So if you missed it, don't worry. We'll have the link. We'll have everything going. All right, here we go. We got Jamari back.
I live.
All right, let me see. Make sure we're. Yep, we are broadcasting. At least I think we are. Yep. All right. Now we're just waiting for Mr. Ford. Restream, I'm gonna need some to you know how to help me out here. Yeah, I'm gonna take something off this monthly payment. If this is what I'm gonna have to keep dealing with. This was crazy.
It is kind of weird.
I did think it was really interesting him talking about blurred and how for him and his generation, it's a derogatory
I'd never
term.
heard that term until within I'd say the last 10 years, even maybe even
I,
6.
I personally haven't either, but yeah, to me, blurred was like the last 10 years tops,
Yeah, that's stretching it.
right? And even the concept of being called a nerd, yes, nerd was derogatory.
Mm-hmm.
But now, I mean, I've been called a nerd now. I'd be like, all right, but you still go see them MCU movies. you
Well,
still, you still,
that has changed into something completely different nowadays.
right, obviously. You know, hold on, let me make sure he's still good to go. Oh, what a day! What a day!
Yeah, like I had never heard the term blurred until the within it is. And I'm going to say within the last 10 years, like you said.
Okay, come on. It says no video feed, and
So we still having issues.
I can't get him on. I don't know what's up with his. Oh, there we go.
You got it.
All right, here we go. Let's try this again. Um, can you hear us? TC? Looks like you're frozen. All right.
Yeah, he does seem like it.
Oh, there we go. TC, you there? Say something. Wave. Shake your head. We see you, but you don't see and
I
hear
see him
us.
moving. Now I see him moving.
Yeah, he's moving. He's there. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, TC? Can you hear us? Can you hear us, TC? Here, let me. We can hear you. But anyway, while he's working on that, but yeah, like I just it's fun. I mean, it's funny we're talking about blurred when blurred con is tomorrow, right? And it's considered one of the biggest um events for Black fans of the culture.
Yeah.
Um, again, I'm really sad that I'm not going. Um, all right, let me. All right, he says he's backstage. Let me do this. All right, TC, can you hear us? Log out and log back in. But yeah, you know, I'm looking forward to going next year. Hoping to, you know, take part in the festivities. And honestly, Dragon Con sometimes comes off as a blurred fest. Sometimes,
Really?
I feel like it is.
Dragon Con? I don't know.
Yeah, that's how I felt when I first went. When it was like, I was like, man, there's a lot of black people here. Here, let me take him off. Yeah, I was like, man, there's a lot of black people here. And so I got to be honest, it was very Chocolate City, at least for me.
I,
But
I, uh,
but
I will
again,
definitely say this much. It is different.
but I mean, Black Comics and Color Festival. I believe there's another one in Baltimore that has a similar. Somebody said never you seen it used in a derogatory way. Yeah, blurred is different. Hold on, TC, can you hear us? TC. No, he still can't hear us. I'm gonna let me see if I can remove. Oh, there, he jogged out. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's this that's news to me. That's news to me. But I mean, listen, if you can go to one of these events where it's just like black people loving comic books, I highly recommend it. Um, I wish I was going to BlurredCon. I'm looking forward to Contropolis, New Jersey, but I really wanted to go to BlurredCon. And I know I'm going to be insanely jealous this weekend when everyone's posting their pictures and everything. I think Greg Burnham and Marcus Williams are going. I believe they are. I know Danny and Morgan aren't. I believe they aren't. But I know Greg is going. I'd be butchering his last name, Elise. I know he's going. I don't think Michael Watson's going. I mean, I know some of us. We all got to travel. Like for me, that would have been a flight. I would have had to pay for a flight, which is why I'm manifesting it next year. I'm at least gonna get a table, or they gonna invite me. I'm gonna be invitee, and they gonna fly me out. That might be asking for a lot, but I'm putting it out there. I'm putting it out there. Oh man, I hope we can do this interview. If not, we might have to run it back another day, which sucks.
Yeah.
Because it's no one's fault. It's just
No, it's technology. It's purely on the technology not working the way we want it to.
Yeah. We'll kill a little more time if he can't get back on in 10 15 minutes, we'll call it. But I did what I watched a horror movie this week. It took me like 3 days to get through it.
What was this?
Evil Dead Rise. Let's see if he's back. Hold on. Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Oh, right. We did it.
I had to take it off my Wi-Fi and go to 5G. And somehow that's working. So
that's really weird.
I have no idea what's going on today. This is just gonna be one of them episodes. We're gonna just do it. we're gonna do it on the fly. But I wanted to get back to your conversation because we kind of touched on it and how you took offense to the term blurred, and we were saying how we hadn't even heard that term before 10 years ago or so.
Right. It's been there, but it's not hasn't been prevalent. It's a derivation of nerd, and that was when that was more of a derogatory term. Again, culture has adopted that as a phraseology, and I'm still not really comfortable with it. Okay. Because I find it reductive, like as if oh, those little guys running around with block ears, he he he. And it's just a personal thing, I guess. I mean, although I did speak to others who kind of felt the same way. I believe I posted something on it on my Facebook page, and the older crowd was like, "Oh, that's offensive. Why would they talk? Why would they say that?" And I think the younger crowd was like, "Well, but that's what we kind of own it." And so I said, "Okay, fine." And I had a long discussion with the person that wrote the article, and they were very apologetic, because they didn't really know that could proceed as potentially offensive to anybody because there were people at the show referring to themselves as blurs. And I said, okay, fine. I understand your viewpoint. You know.
That's interesting. I mean, especially ironic considering Blurred Con is this weekend.
Yeah,
And
I
yeah,
wasn't even aware that was a show.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been going for a few years now. I
Mhm.
don't know. I only became aware of it, I want to say right before COVID. Like it was right before COVID when I was really beginning to get into doing Comic Cons.
Mhm.
Actually, it was at Dragon Con. That's the first time I was aware of it because somebody came to my table and said, "Hey, we want you. You know, you would really do well here at Blurred Con." The irony being that I'm not going still, but I'm
Well,
salty. Leave me alone. I'm salty. I'm gonna get over it. I'm gonna stop being emotional.
it,
Excuse me.
it's like Ekbach for me in Philly. I literally been trying to get to that show for 15 years, and every single time that weekend pops up, something else comes up that's urgent, and I can't go.
Well,
Um,
yeah, for me it was freaking COVID. Like
yeah.
COVID prevented it because I was like, "Oh, looks like a good idea," and then it was like COVID, and then I think what happened is the people that signed up for it before COVID got first dibs when everything started to open back up last year, and
Hmm.
so I wasn't obviously part of that wave because I came in after the fact. But anyway, I'm talking about the term blurred. Um, I'm I I'm probably closer to your generation than this generation that are using the term. But
Hmm.
even once I heard the term, I don't know if I ever thought about it in a derogatory way. I mean, nerd, yeah, but blurred is black nerd. It felt cooler because black people make everything cool. Um,
That's kind of yeah, that's kind of how it kind of came across for me in a lot of ways was, we took something and because we associate our cool factor to it, the culture, and it turns into something
Yeah.
way it feels even better to say that than nerd because like you
right.
said, nerd carries all of the negative connotations and everything that it's had up to this point.
Hmm.
So you're right with that point.
Yeah. I mean, I don't care that other people use it and own it. That's fine. It doesn't work for me, and I think the reason why was because when I got involved in comics, it was hammered into my head that, you know what, it's a lot of fun and excitement and cosplaying and stuff, but this is a job and you have to take it seriously. And so that was the mindset that I came into this market with. Like, it's great if you want to dress up like Superman or Wonder Woman or whatever character you want at a convention, but don't forget that at the end of the day, we're crafting something that goes beyond this marketplace. At the end of the day, so that was always my mindset was have fun, but take it seriously. You know.
Okay. Well, that's a good segue. We always like to talk to our guests about their particular journey. We can get
Mhm.
into the other things. There's some stuff I love to talk to you about because you have some very interesting perspectives on the industry and
Mm.
stuff that you've shared on Facebook. So I definitely want to get into that. But I want to kind of go back. When did your love of comics begin?
I kind of fell into it when I was about 10 years old, and it goes back that far. Um, I had a teacher whose husband wrote children's books for Scholastic. And I thought that's the coolest job in the world. That's the job I want when I grow up. And I started to learn how to write. And I began to understand that if I wrote, I'd need someone to illustrate the stories if I'm doing children's books. So I began to learn how to draw. I began to learn a little bit more about the process of writing from watching soap operas because my mother always had them stories on as a kid. And then I went from that to comic books. It was everything was there. Anything that you would need to do in a children's book is you can find in a comic book. All the elements are there. So I
Right.
started reading more and more comics, and then I decided I wanted to do my own comics, and there were a few of us that uh, were kind of gathered together as a kind of little unofficial group. We called ourselves Total Comics, and we basically did these what I call homemade comics. We would take like typing paper, 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, and we would draw our comics on that. We would photocopy them, and then we would sell them in the local stores. Who I thought it was like a little novelty or a school project, and they sold. They didn't sell. We weren't selling like hundreds of copies, but like maybe tens or 30 copies, 50 copies. But they sold, and I said, okay, maybe we have something here. A lot of us have gone on to do other things in comics. Dave Johnson was one of the guys that we worked together with. He went on to work for Kamiko on Robotech. And there's a few others that went on to do work for other smaller publishers. But we eventually connected with Dick Giordano and Frank McLaughlin. They had a class on how to create comics, and it didn't cost us any money because there was a grant that paid for the course. So we took the course, and then after the course was over, they said, would you guys like to be apprentices? And I jumped at it. So I came in, and I would come in right up. Their office was right down the street from where I went to high school. So I'd get out of high school, I'd come right down there, and I'd be doing everything from paste ups to filling in blacks, black areas on the artwork. Eventually graduating to doing background pieces on the work, like Detective Comics, Batman, Tales of Green Lantern Corps, stuff like that. And then I got this notice in the fan press that Charlton Comics was going to do a new book. They weren't going to pay you, but you could do a story, and if they accepted it, they would pay you in copies of the book.
Right.
And so I said, let's give it a shot. And so a group of us decided to go up there. Somehow I missed that first trip. Don't know what happened. They all went up there and they showed their work, and the guys in charge were like, this is great, but no, we can't use it. There's nothing here. Because all they did was show samples of their work. They didn't have a completed story. So they came back and I heard this and I said, okay, fine. I'm going to do a 1-page completed story. And I was literally inking the thing on the train up to Derby, Connecticut to get this thing in there. And the same thing happened. They looked at my artwork and they said, oh, this is great, but you don't have a story. And I said, oh, I got this right here. And the guy looked at it and said, this will do. And I said, great. So that was my first published work at the age of almost 16.
Wow. That's very Jim Shooter-esque right there.
Oh, yeah.
That's very, very, very Jim Shooter-esque. That's awesome, man. It's interesting because I always, you do enough of these cons, you get to sit with a lot of this is going to sound terrible, but the older guard, the guys that have been doing this for a long time, and you talk to them, and the OGs, yeah, that's better. And you talk to them about their stories and how they got into the industry and the way the industry was set up back then. And every time they talk about how you had to start at like the bottom rung, and learn your way through the process, through the industry. But and they always say, that's what the newer generation misses.
Yes, that's one of my arguments. That's definitely one of my arguments.
Okay, go ahead. Tell us. Finish.
Well, I see a lot of really talented people, and they submit work to my publishing house is United Comics. They submit work to me, and it's really great and it's very detailed. But there's the number one thing that's lacking is they don't understand how to tell a story. And and when they come to me at conventions and they say, "Oh yeah, I want to show you some of my work," I go, "Great." And they'll go, "Okay, this is my artwork," and and I'm like, "Okay, but I can't understand what's going on in the story. You're not showing me what's happening." And then they'll explain it to me, but they'll explain it to me based on their concept of what a story is, which is the stats of the heroes and the backstory. And I'm like, no, I don't want to know that. I want to know what the story is, and I want you to show me on the paper what that story is. They think, and a lot of them grew up in the 90s, and they saw the big paydays of the artists in the 90s, when comics were selling 1 million, 3 million, 7 million copies, and they go, "That's the job I want. You can draw a whole comic book and make $500,000. I want to do that." So they learned how to draw,
Me
but they
too.
didn't understand the mechanics of designing a comic book. Knowing how to draw is one thing. Understanding how to tell a story or communicate an idea to an audience is another. And they get pissy when I kind of try to explain that to them because they think, well, you know what you're talking about. My work is better than yours. Okay, maybe it is, but you're not telling a story. And so does that, because you can render something better doesn't necessarily mean that it's better than mine because I know how to tell a story. Because that was hammered into me from day one. I literally, Dick Giordano said to me when I showed him something, and he said, he goes, "What's going on here?" And I explained to him, he goes, "That's great. Now are you going to go along with every single comic book and explain to every single person that's reading your book what's going on in your story? Or are you going to show them so they don't have to do that?" And I said, that makes sense to me. They don't have that part of that equation.
Right. But yeah, that's pretty much what I mean. I was talking to Larry Stroman. Larry Stroman said pretty much word for word that, like, he was talking about, they don't, everybody can draw really nicely, but they don't understand progression of the story like you're talking about. I think Larry Hama was saying the same thing. And I know for me, one of my big things is when I'm doing a page, I try to go, okay, can I understand what's happening without the words? And
Right,
if I
exactly.
can't understand what's happening without the words, then I kind of have to start all over again. Or like one of the things I will have to do is sometimes I have to throw in another panel because the transition from one panel to the next. But I also took a lot of sequential art. I took sequential art classes in college and taking animation. But I think a lot of people are now, because it's so easy to jump into the industry, you just make a book. You can just make your book, and there are a lot of people that do well. But I've personally read books that I've kickstarted, that I've done on Kickstarter, and I'm not saying names because I don't do that. Because I want to encourage people, but there are some books that I open up and I'm like, I have no idea what's happening. Like, I don't know what the story
I've been
is.
very supportive of the Kickstarter community, but I do a lot of those books. I end up giving them away because I can't. They're not well produced.
I don't give them away. I hold on to them.
Well, see, the thing is that I spent so long in the industry that I've had all the great books that you can collect, and they're long gone now. Like, I treat comics now like catch and release. I read them, I enjoy them, and then I move them on to someone else who might enjoy them. Whether it's by selling them on eBay or saying, "Hey, you might like this comic," and I just give it to them. Because it might be up their alley more so than mine.
You're the polar opposite of our uncles. Our uncles are hoarders, man.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess they are in their
They're
own
hoarders. Way. They have a huge comic book collection, and they're.
I think comic book collection.
Well, what do you expect them to do? Like, what do you want them to do with the
collection? I want them to give it to me.
Oh, it's really
that's
not
what I want.
They're hoarders. You just want the collection.
I want it.
If you think you're getting that whole collection on your own,
listen. I promise you, they'll trust me more than you do. I just want you to understand that.
Well, for years,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
For years, I had to hide my collection because my mother didn't want those things in the house. She thought that you read those comics, they're gonna make you crazy. You're gonna go off and do crazy things. She wasn't fond of the concept of art in general, and so she grew to be accepting of it because I kept telling her this is something I want to do for a career. And then I get the questions like, well, what happens if you got into an accident and you lost use of your right hand? What are you going to do then? How are you going to earn a living? So I thought about that, and I was like, I don't know. So I learned how to draw my left hand. Wow. And then she goes, well, what happens if your left hand goes and you can't draw with your left hand? So I learned to draw with my foot, I swear to God. And what I learned out of the experience was the ability to draw doesn't come from your right hand or your left hand or your foot. It comes from here. So it doesn't matter. I said to her, this is what I want to do. I'm going to find a way to do it. And then when she saw me at an art show sell my first couple of pieces of artwork, then at that point it was okay. Because then she thought, okay, fine, this is something you can really make money at. versus you can't make money as an artist. Artists don't make money. Yes, they do. Something I try to teach kids all the time. I literally had a kid. I draw caricatures for parties as well. And one of the things that this kid came over, he's excited, and he stood behind me for like a good 2 hours watching me draw other kids. And I said, you like art? And he goes, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I really want to be an artist, and I grew up. And I said, you can. And he goes, no, I can't. And I said, why not? My mom says artists don't make money. And I looked at him, and I was like, okay, look around you. What do you see? And he goes, well, there's that car, there's the buildings, there's this, there's that. And I said, what do all those things have in common? And he said, I don't know. They're all designed by an artist. Somebody made money. And then he lit up again, like, oh, maybe I could do this, But that's the thing. The people that are not engaged in the art community don't understand that this is a worthwhile pursuit, because they think if you can't punch a time card or dig in the ground, it's not a real job.
Well, but I'm going to play devil's advocate with you there. I do think there is a matter of understanding how to make money in comic, because with art, because I know a lot of people just want to do art, and then they're just like, well, I want my art to make money, and that's great, but
works, yeah.
Right, like and it's one of the things that is funny. I went to SCAD, and then we had someone from SCAD on last week, and then actually the week before, and we were talking about how we wish they would have taught us how to make money with our art, like showed us avenues where we can fit in and use our talents to actually, make a living doing it. Because it's one thing to be like, all right, you're going to have a career as a 3D animator. And it's another thing to be like, listen, this is what you need to learn. These are the companies you need to target. We're going to show you how to build a resume. I mean, they showed us how to do a reel, but it's like, help us learn the business so that, work with us to do internships, to do stuff like that, instead of it being, and I think that's missing. Right. With a lot of like young people,
I think I looked into things the way I ended up going, the route that I ended up going, because I learned it from the bottom up. And you're right, the art schools will teach you how to do it, but they don't tell you how to take that next step. One of the things I'd love to do, and I keep talking about getting a grant to do it or something, is opening a studio where I would teach people exactly that, because that's, I think, the missing link in between success in this marketplace, or any marketplace that's art related, and not. You have to understand the value of your work, but you also have to understand what the marketplace value of your work is.
Right, because even comics, like understanding the business of being in the comic book industry is something that I'm learning on the fly. Mm-hmm. Like most people do. Well, but I'm somebody, I follow comics, I follow the industry, but it's one thing to be like, I'm following it, and it's another thing to be in there and understanding how to set up at a con, how to talk to people, how to network, how to do this, how to do publishing, how to do all that stuff. So many of us kind of learn on the fly, but you had the ability and the opportunity to kind of learn how the sausage is made before you went out and did it. And I think what we're seeing a lot with a lot of independent people is a lot of us, and I'm going to include myself in it, didn't learn how the sausage was made via people who made sausage before. And so it's a lot of trial and error, and trial and error can be great, but
it also drags the process out.
Right, absolutely. I keep saying I would be in such a different place if I knew everything that I knew now back then. Oh my gosh, I can't
this
even
generation does benefit by things like YouTube, where people do little tutorials on or they relate their experiences online and say, this is what I had to go through. Maybe now you can learn something from what I went through, and that might take you to the next step. That we didn't have that back then. We barely had anything resembling an internet.
I used
Back then.
DC Comics Guide to Inking,
Mhm.
Guide to Lettering, Guide to Coloring. I was reading those, writing. Those
I,
is
I
what I
own
was using.
I own all those books, and it's funny because I know some of those people. Klaus Janson and Carl Potts and those guys.
Oh yeah.
So when I came across the books, I was like, yeah, let me take these because occasionally I'll get asked to do a talk at a library or what have you. They have reference material now. But not just my own experiences, but I can say, look, it's not just me talking out of my butt. These are other guys that have been doing this for decades, and they're saying the same things I'm telling you because I learned from these guys pretty much. You know, I mean, I've gotten to talk to Will Eisner and gotten his perspective on things. There was an artist named Bern Hogarth, who's
Oh yeah.
really very very well known. Got to talk to him about illustration and lights and darks, and he had a course called Dynamic Anatomy, and he has a book named by the same name. And so I learned just from conversations with these guys, how they came up and what they were willing to share with me, because I asked questions. I like to ask questions, and they answered them. I think they liked the attention because I don't think anyone really they looked at their work and they thought this is amazing work. Maybe I can own some of it someday and make a lot of money, and it wasn't about that. That money is going to come if that's what you want to do, but I wanted to learn the craft.
Yeah, but before Jamari goes, I just want to say, like, I totally agree with that. Like, I try to, when I go to cons, like when I befriend, creators, at least in the beginning, a lot of them I would just be like, tell me what's wrong with this. I'd be like, hey, here's my book. Feel free to rip it apart. Like tell me what I'm doing wrong, and a lot of times the knowledge is just out there waiting for you, and they're
Hmm.
willing to give it.
Oh, absolutely.
I tell people all the time, Rags Morales sat down and I had a shirt on with my character on it that I had drawn. And he was like, oh, it's really good, but come here, sit down. And he sat down with me and he redrew the head
Yeah.
and the face. And he's like, this is how you should do it from now on. And I got it literally, I look at it every day, like when I'm drawing,
He's
and
the master. Yep.
right. And like sitting with different creators and them explaining to you how to get somewhere in this industry, instead of just going for signatures. Like I know a lot of people they're looking for a job, so they're giving their stuff to the creators hoping that the creator will tell them that their stuff is amazing and I want
Hmm.
to give you a job, instead of, well, tell me what I need to do to get better, or tell me how to get somewhere,
Well,
show
because
me.
in their minds they're already there. They just want the pat on the back, that
Yeah.
gratification.
Yeah. I had a young man I talked to at uh where was I just at? Heroes Con. He's asking me
Uh,
advice about how to get into the industry. And I'm like, make a comic. And he's like, yeah, but I'm trying to do da 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 da. And I'm like, dude, I can't tell you anything else until I know that you're serious about it.
I get into more arguments online with people because I'm saying, okay, how long is it taking you to create your comic? And I'm hearing like, oh, 6 months, 9 months, 2 years. One guy was 15 years because he had to design every little bit of each character's backstory. And I said, you do realize that you've wasted a decade working on or more on this project that you're going to do 2 or 3 issues of. And if it doesn't catch on, you're going to get bored. Now what? And you just burned a decade of your life on this thing that was this enormous project that nobody really cared about except you. You know, like start from the beginning. When I was coming up, we learned how to draw 1-page stories, 5-page stories, 8-page stories, 12-page stories. Nobody can do that anymore, unless you've been in the marketplace for a while. I've been on a quest literally for the last 2 years to get people to contribute short stories. They don't know how to do it.
I know I'm supposed to. I saw that and I was like, I want to do it with TC. I want to give him one, but I'm so busy.
Yeah. Oh, I feel you. I'm
I
in the same boat. I've
I
been
was like,
working
man, I
on.
want to do this, but
Yeah.
I gotta stop doing something else to do it.
My
But
problem is I get all these ideas. I develop them. I'm working on a project that shouldn't take me. It should, under normal circumstances, shouldn't take me more than 3 weeks to do. And I've been sitting on it and sitting on it and sitting on it because I've got other issues I'm dealing with that are in the back that are above and beyond working on the comic book. And it's like frustrating me because I'm like, I should have this done. I know I should have this done. But I'm also working on a distribution network project that I've been working on for the last 10 years, and it's so close to being something tangible that I've been putting a lot of time and energy into that, and it takes time away from me at the drawing table.
okay,
It's killing me. I mean, once it all comes together, I think it's going to be amazing. But I got to get there.
yeah. Go ahead, Jamari.
Do you both feel like there should be other examples within the art world and more real? I guess, and I don't even want to say realistic, but more, I guess, some of the practical careers in art, because I don't think those jobs get shown to people. One of the problems I run into, and you guys kind of alluded to this, was
Mhm.
when I deal with students who are art centric, and I will sit them down and I ask them, do you want to make money? Do you want to actually live off of your art, or do you just want to draw Goku all day? And if you've heard me say this, Javon, it's the thing where I have to kind of figure out, I ask them to think about the difference between making money from your art and that being the thing that feeds you every day, and what you have to do, as opposed to the aspect of what they think it'll do. It's like, I'm just going to draw my anime character, or I'm going to draw my fairy art, but that's the only thing they do.
Right. And those are the guys that go into the conventions and they do these wonderful prints, and they pitch their artwork for variant covers to companies, but that's as far as they go. When you actually give them a story, they can't do it. They don't
Those
understand.
people, I don't think they have any desire to actually tell a story. They just want to draw shit. It's a
Right.
big difference between the people. There are people who are outright storytellers. Like, I can tell a story, but I have very limited art skills. Where
Mm.
and Javon is gifted enough that he can draw and he can create. He can write a story, and he writes a wonderful story in the
I
medium that he's doing, that he's using.
I do think that is a big problem, is that there's a presumption that if you're an artist and you're a comic book artist, that you know how to write a story. And writing is one thing, art is another. So you can, if you collaborate with a writer, and I have some really good writers that I also work with. In addition to myself, like I said, I started wanting to be a writer. Um, I have ideas of yin yang, but I also understand story structure, beginning, middle, and end. The artist knows how to create the characters. I'll create the characters and kind of fashion a story around it. And it's like, no, that's not how writing really
No,
works.
that's
So,
storyboarding essentially. It's like, and it's kind of what sometimes
You can make a
hurts
lot of money
me.
doing storyboards.
oh
I'm
yes,
not
you
saying
can.
it's a,
I
hmm?
did one. I did storyboard for one movie that I don't think ever came out. And there's no requirement to do detailed artwork because really it's a guide. So the only people
Yeah.
that are seeing it are like the director and the producers and that kind of So they're not looking for highly detailed work. They're looking for motion. They're looking for where the camera's going to go, what the basic rough imagery is going to be like, and they will pay you 5 times or more on any comic I've ever worked on in my life. you know. But
By the way, you see a lot of comic artists have
jump.
left
Hmm.
comics to storyboard, do design work for Hollywood,
Oh yeah.
design work for video games. One of the biggest two names who You probably don't even know, but they are two of the best comic book artists that I used to love. I'm gonna butcher his last name, Steve Scrocy
Yeah, I know that is.
and Jeff Darrow.
Oh,
Um,
that's not even
though,
that's the tip of the arc, my friend.
well,
Yeah,
what I'm saying is, I was
yeah.
gonna say the two of them did so much of the design work for the Matrix.
Oh yeah.
Like all that stuff you see, that's them. Like they did a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of that, and from my understanding, they did way better than they ever did in comics. So,
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, but that's
Neil
what I
Adams.
mean. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Neil Adams had left comics for a while and did a lot of movie work. That really built up Continuity Associates. The Terror Dogs, what they call the Terror Dogs in Ghostbusters, were designed by Bernie Wrightson. Um, and so I mean, a lot of those guys. You're right. Dave Stevens, who created the Rocketeer, probably made a ton more money doing storyboards and things like that than he ever did in the comics. He did comics as a labor of love, but
Right.
he made his money doing storyboards.
I mean, one of the biggest characters in fiction and TV and cartoons was created by three comic book writers. Ben 10.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
they
And it's funny because I never knew that they were connected to it until I saw them at a convention once, and I'm
you
like,
didn't know?
oh, okay, yeah, I didn't know until they also created was it I Kill Giants, that movie,
Yeah. Yes.
which
Yes. I
that
think
was
so.
yeah that was yeah
Yeah.
that was really
Steven
So
Seagal is Steven T. Seagal
Steven C. Seagal.
Siegel. I say
Yeah,
Seagal. Siegel.
I'm like
I've
that's
always
not
read,
right.
but I
I was
read
like,
it
hold
like
on.
Seagal. I've always read it. I just thought that they had the same name.
Oh yeah, no.
So
But again, that has always been my point. I always looked at it in the same way where people all, especially young black kids, they think that the only way you can make money is like either you're a doctor or a basketball player or a rapper
Yeah,
and stuff like that. And I'm like, there's a wide bandwidth of breadth, excuse me, of careers that to you can use your artistic ability to make a good living. Now they're very difficult to get into,
well,
but you
yeah.
have to. But again, it's like anything. You
Mhm.
put in the work, you find your way into the industry, you make it there. You could be living a very good life. You can be doing very well for yourself.
What I did, because at one point I got away from comics. That's a story for another day. But I just was kind of burnt out, and yeah, I worked for a party entertainment company, and they saw that I could do caricature art, and so they said, "Hey, you ever thought of doing this for parties?" And I said, "I don't know. What does it pay?" And they told me what it paid, and I said, "Okay, I'll try it." And I did it, and 35 years later, I'm still drawing them. Um, and I find that it's more immediate because I have the subject in front of me, and in 4 to 7 minutes, they have a drawing that for the most part, enjoy. Some people don't like them, some people do. Um, but I found that to be very, very profitable. And I use it now when I sell the United Comics because I'll offer to do little head sketches of children that come by. And the children will come by and they're fascinated by that. And I'm doing, a caricature that I'm giving them for free. And while I'm drawing them and the parents are standing there, I pitch my line. So I'm doing the sales spiel, but they're not going anywhere because they have to wait for their kid to be drawn
Right,
until
right.
they hear everything I have to do, and it often translates into sales because I do the drawing, I give them the drawing, they go thanks, and they go,
Takes
well, how much
notes.
is that comic, and they buy the comic.
I'm just gonna steal that one for later. From me. I'm gonna steal that one for me. So yeah, so let's talk about United.
Mhm.
How did you get started with that? Like, where did the impetus for that come from?
Okay.
What's your goal going forward?
Well, it started with you get out and then they pull you back in. Oh, you worked on comics before. You want to help me with my comic? And I'm like, not particularly, but what do you got? And the juices started to flow again. And so I would go from giving them tips to basically becoming their editor, to showing them techniques and things and marketing and distribution. And then the book would come out, and the papers or whatever local media would come onto this guy's book, and they'd be like, oh, this is great. And of course, the big number one question they'll always ask you is, and you did all this by yourself? And the person goes, yeah, I did. And I'm like, I don't remember you doing that all by yourself when I was the one that showed you how to do X, Y, and Z. So, and it came to a head when I did this job for someone. At this point, I'm like, I was offering my services for no money. And I finally said, no, I got to get paid to do this, because it was starting to become actual work and not just a couple of, questions being answered. And the person said, okay, I can pay you X dollars. And I did the work for the book. And what he did is I got him the deal with Diamond. I, connected him with colorists for the thing. He didn't have an inker, so I literally inked the book for him. And when the book came out, one of the local retailers said, yeah, that book came out, but you're not going to like it. And I said, what do you mean? He'd whited out my name as if I had never had anything to do with the book, because he wanted to take all the credit for it. And I said, that's not cool. So I went to go get paid, and that money wasn't there either. And I said, okay, so I literally just got screwed. There's been a comeuppance to that since then, but at that point, I'm like, why am I doing this stuff to benefit other people, and I get nothing out of it? So I started United Comics. Like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, you're gonna do it through my company, and I'll handle the production and the distribution, and when the money comes in, it comes in through me, and we'll take care of it. We'll deal with it that way, and that's worked. Um, it was never my intention to get back into doing comics and on a publishing level, but I needed to. Or it was either that or just walk away from the industry altogether. Um, and since then, like I said, taking the ideas that I've had and I've kind of expanded on that. So we have three different parts to the way United runs. It's three different imprint names. You have the core United Comics. We have an imprint called Unicorn, and it's basically me taking all those original visions that people have. They own their property. We don't, we don't do anything. We might, tweak things editorially, but it's really their project. Sink or swim is their project. Um, and then there's a third imprint, which is all supposed to be trade paperbacks, which we're almost close to putting out the first one soon. And all the stuff is very diverse. It's not all superheroes. We have one book that my current favorite in the line, called Alien Summer, and it's basically like an old Casper Richie Rich comic. And it's a lot of fun. We have another book that's coming out that will be in part of that third imprint, which is called Simpatico. And it's literally an adaptation of an old silent film from the 20s. One of the first black directors in Hollywood did this. And the project is public domain. So I had a creator come to me and say, hey, I want to do a comic book, a graphic novel adaptation of this. And I saw what he had in mind, and I liked the idea. So I said, let's do this. So that should be out before the end of the year. And so people that don't necessarily collect comic books might like that particular project, because it's got a black historical context to it. They may never pick up a copy of Alien Summer, but they'll probably pick up a copy of Body and Soul. And I like that diversity, especially having gone through the pipeline at Charlton, where everything was there were superheroes, there were war titles, there were horror titles, there were comedy titles, and I like that diversity. That's what comics to me was when I grew up. Now it's more action adventure, super teams, and trying to broaden the market a little bit that way. And I am noticing now more independent publishers that are kind of going that route as well, which kind of pleases me. So
Yeah, I was talking. Was it not No, this past weekend on another podcast, and somebody asked me about comic books and where they are now, and I was saying how never before in comic book history have you had such a wide selection, diverse selection of stories that are being told. So everybody can find something for themselves. Like
Right.
if you are a young queer kid and you're looking for something that you could see yourself in, there's literally lines and lines of books out there
Mm-hmm.
that have your name on it. If you're a young Black kid who's looking for something, a superhero with your face on it, I mean, I've got that, for people, then if you like horror books, it's so, and this is going to lead into a question for you. I think that the future of comics is brighter than a lot of people tend to think. And I know I'm gonna let you cook in a second. And the reason why I feel this way is because the diversity there, like, is starting to kind of like the stranglehold that Marvel and DC have had on the industry for decades. I think it's loosened because the independent comics, the things that we just talked about, how like anybody can just make a book right now,
Mm-hmm.
have kind of opened the floodgates to allow for other stories to be told without the gatekeeping that
Right.
is involved with the big two. Like before, the only way your stuff was going to be shown was if you could get past the gates of Marvel and DC. And then the 90s kind of helped break those gates down a bit.
Yeah,
And
Valiant,
now,
Image, yeah.
right, Image, Valiant, Malibu, for all
Mm-hmm.
cross gen, there were so many that kind of came up and they fell. But what they did is they kind of showed that there's a chink in the armor of the big two, and now we have so many creators that now can go, you know what, I can put this story out, I can reach a demographic, and you can make really, really good money now. And that's why I think the future is brighter, but you have a different perspective.
Well, yes and no. I do agree with you that the future is bright as far as the diversification of material in the marketplace, because you're right, Marvel and DC have kind of slowly packed it down to it's superheroes or some derivation of which. But the biggest problem we have is, as bright as the future is, it's a dim bulb. And what I mean by that is that when comics were pretty much just Marvel, DC, Charlton, Harvey Comics, and Archie Comics, and maybe a handful of others, they were being distributed through the newsstand. Now, the newsstand was not a perfect process at all by any stretch of the imagination. And when I heard that, it blew me away. And I heard that also from having conversations with Dick Giordano. One of the things he said is the independent distributors nationwide didn't really care too much about comics. It was just one more thing to fill to fill a rack with. So they had an extra room on the truck. They would throw some comics on the truck, and they'd make it to a store. Um, and if a comic book was popular, they were selling those issues out the back door, and they would never even make it to the racks. They would sell, like Green Lantern, Green Arrow, X-Men. These are Neil Adams books, and they were getting canceled because of low sales. Well, they
Right.
weren't really low sales. They were taking bundles of those issues, and they were selling them out the back door to collectors, and saying that, oh, we didn't sell those, and they would get an affidavit, because the newsstand was returnable. And meanwhile, those books are, the money's in their pockets. The comic shop or the publishers are going, well, this isn't selling. It's critically acclaimed, but we're not selling that many issues. The more popular it is, the less copies we seem to be selling.
Right.
So they'd end up having to cancel the book, because back then, if your comic sold less than 200,000 copies, it was canceled.
Right.
Now, different thing. 40,000 copies. Woohoo! It's a banner day. Let's pull out the champagne. Um, but they were still getting distributed, and they were getting distributed widely. The market now is gone back to a level of diversity, but it's in little clusters. If you don't go to a Comic-Con, you don't know that Fister Comics exists, let alone, selling copies of their book anywhere. One of my goals is to create a new distribution market. Hand in hand with the direct market. I'm not going to tell you that we need to throw out the baby with the bathwater, because I don't believe that either. It's a matter of increasing opportunities for the marketplace. The thing is again, the newer kids coming in are creating their comics, and they don't want to share that money with a distributor, because they want to make all that money themselves. But the thing is, what they're not understanding, in my opinion, is that yes, you're getting all the money to your project, but you're selling less copies. So by finding a network of broader distribution, yeah, you're gonna have to share the money, but you're gonna sell more copies. If you sell more copies, that will offset whatever you think you're losing by going in with a distributor. So one of the projects that I'm working on now, like I said, is called Indie Box. And the whole idea is, yes, we want to get the comics into stores wherever possible, but we also wanted to expand the marketplace. So in other words, places that don't carry comics, that might have in the 90s but don't now, we would approach them and say, look, we have this whole new marketplace that you guys can make money from, and get them to carry the books. We're trying to spearhead that by going back to newsprint, because we can print on newsprint cheaper than we can on the whiter paper. Yes, is the quality not as good as on a brighter stock? Of course, that's the way it is. That's the way it's been for decades. But if I can cut my price down on my comic book to less than $2, then it's an impulse buy and not just a collectible. And as an impulse buy, people might say, I don't know who this company is, but hey, it's $2. And then they buy it, they roll it up, and they throw it in the trash, or they use it as cat, for cat litter. I don't care, because they read it. And if they're reading it, they're gonna come back and read more. And if they want the collected edition on the brighter, whiter paper, that's what the trade paperback division does. So, but we have to make people know that the book exists before they'll buy it. And if they're not convention goers, and I learned that recently. I just did a convention here in New Haven, and they, I kept telling the guy that ran the show, I said, "Guy, you need to promote this locally, not just in comic shops." So we did, and Channel 8 News basically did a little "What's happening this weekend" thing, and they mentioned the show, and then he had a wider crowd, and a lot of those people only came to the show because they heard, oh, there's something fun, comic convention that's local we didn't know about. We're gonna go and check it out, but they wouldn't have gone otherwise, and that would have been missed opportunities for sales, because those comics may not be being sold in comic shops or anywhere else outside of a Comic-Con, or maybe a craft fair or trade fair if you're selling comics that way. And I've done that as well. Um, so yes, the marketplace is, idealistically, is brighter, but I think as far as the outreach, needs to be bigger than it is now. It needs to be bigger by at least 500% from what it is now.
Yeah, you and I have, and then I'll let Jamari. You and I have talked about this. We've gone, and then I've kind of, especially last time we talked, we kind of went back and forth. I think it's a great idea. The only nitpick I had was the newsprint, and the reason why I had this nitpick, and we've discussed this before, is because when I think, especially nowadays, when something looks cheap, because newsprint, number one, is easily dissolvable, like it's easily degradable.
Yeah, it is.
And it doesn't take to the quality of the art the way the newer paper does.
Oh no,
to
I agree with you there. I
right.
do.
And so, but I understand what you're doing. You're saying I don't really care about that. I care about getting it in the hands of more people. And if you like what you read, you can get the better version of it later.
Hmm.
And the only challenge I would have is to then you're telling somebody to buy something they've already bought twice, which is a hard
Well,
sell.
no, it's kind of like if you listen to a song on the radio and you like a couple songs with that artist, then you go out and buy the CD.
Yeah, but
You
you're
know,
listening to it for free though.
well, you are. So I mean, I can't give you my comics for free, but I can lower the cost, and and by doing it on newsprint, and that's my intent. So it is still that low, or what who described this to me once. Okay, a few decades now. Wow, I'm getting old. Um, when we were working on worked on Tales of the Teen Titans, that was Mike DiCarlo was inking that over George Perez, and then I think later over Garcia Lopez. Um, and I was in the background of that stuff, so think I still have some of the originals. But anyway, what their concept of it was, we're gonna put this book out on the whiter Baxter paper, and then a year later we were going to reprint it on the cheaper stock.
Right.
So the people that wanted it on the better paper could get it on the better paper. The people that wanted to read it but just didn't want to pay that extra $2 for a comic book could get it, could wait a year and get it on the cheaper stock and still read and enjoy the story. So they call it the hardcover softcover concept, and
Right.
that's pretty
I
much
actually remember those.
yeah. So I mean that's basically what we're doing, but in reverse. We're giving you the cheap one first, and you go, I like this, but I'm not, not really happy with the format. I'll wait till it comes out in the collection because they don't have to buy it cheap. They
Right.
can wait till it comes out on a whiter paper, and they
Right.
if it's selling well, they know it's coming. So there's that concept that's called wait for the trade, which is kind of the same kind of thing. Um,
Okay.
so they can do that, or they can say, I want to read this now. I want to find out what's going on now. And more people will have access to that cheaper product because, you can go to a local retailer and say, look, it's going to cost you 78 cents a copy to carry this book in your store. You're going to double your money. And then, if you decide to take them out and throw them in the trash, you're still not losing any money. We're going to the comic shops and doing the same thing. Only complaint is, well, I have to sell 3 times as many copies
Right.
as I have to of one of the other books. I'm like, well, but is that true? Yes, it is. If you're looking at the nickels, the dollars and cents, but if you're a retailer and you're buying books and you got books that you're not sure they're going to sell, you're either going to order really really low on them, or you're going to order them and now they're going to go in your back stock inevitably because no one bought it. And if no
Right.
one's buying it, you've tied up space in your store with all this back stock that you can't sell. So look at all the comic shops that at least once every 3 months have these 50% off back issue sales because they're trying to recoup their losses. You're not going to lose any money on a comic that costs you 89 cents a copy or 78 cents a copy,
Right.
um, because you can put it in your back stock at $1 and you're still going to make money.
Okay. All right. Jamari, go ahead, man.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think about digital distribution on that front? Is that would that be an outlet here?
I want to say yes, but unfortunately, I think it's still too new. I get people all the time say, "Oh, digital is the way of the future, and why even bother to print comics anymore? Just go right to digital." Um, I can tell you from people I know that are up in marketing in DC, that are up in marketing in some of the other bigger name companies. Digital is only about 10% of a comic sales. It may seem like it's not, and one reason why is because you have Comixology, you have if that's even still not around anymore, um, and and other distribution networks that are digital that are selling the stuff, but they're not really selling huge numbers. It's still too new. I 10 years from now, maybe so. That might be the thing to do, but it's not there yet. And so I'm looking at, and I believe me, I've asked all those questions. A lot of people. I've had one guy say, just dump it on, go to digital. And I said, but if I'm gonna make, if I'm used to making $5,000 a month selling my print comics, and I'm gonna drop that to $500, was it worth it? Well, no, it isn't really. So it's good to have as one more alternative, absolutely, because there are people that only read digital comics. And I'm not, again, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm looking for ways to expand the market, not to contract it. So yes, digital is a way to get word about your comics out there, but it's still not where it is something that's hit critical mass where people should start to, seriously consider it as a viable replacement, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I'll say I have always had this idea, and then we'll get to it one day. This is, to me, this idea is flat out going to lose me money in the short run, but
Mm-hmm.
gain money in the long run. I've always wanted to do like a one shot, like a zero issue or something,
Mm-hmm.
and just charge like $2 for it
Mm-hmm.
on the prime paper,
Okay.
and then send it reach out to every retailer that I can get and be like, look, this will only cost you $1 per unit.
Mm-hmm.
So you're making double the money per unit. I'm taking the loss, but you're doing double the money. But to me, it would be a primer. It's
Mm-hmm.
like when Marvel did, I don't know if you remember, wow, probably over 10 years now. A while back, they did like a 10-cent issue,
Oh yeah,
and
I
then
got them. I
DC
got
did
them
like
all.
the 50-cent issue, right?
Fantastic Four did a 9-cent issue.
And it was
Yeah.
so friggin' good though. But like it was
Mm-hmm.
like that 9-cent issue is why I started reading that run,
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, it's only 9 cents. And
Right.
so in my mind, I would love to do that, but I know it would require X amount of money. And I would have to be like, I'm just going to take a loss on this one.
Mm-hmm.
But if I do like a zero issue of, say, like Heat, and I send out 50,000 copies, right?
It might work for you. It didn't work for Marvel. It didn't work for DC. And they
Well,
they, they tried it,
yeah,
and they did it a couple times, and they'll probably do it again. But it just, in fact, I think Dynamite, I think, was the last. I think did one as a quarter.
I think so too. Yeah. But in my
Yeah.
mind, if I put out a teaser book, a
Mm-hmm.
full book, but for like $2,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, it's impulse buy. I can really talk to the retailers, like, hey, can you put it right up front? And then, just, hey, this is $2. And let's say if every retailer buys 10 copies across the country
Mm-hmm.
for, so you're only kicking in $10
The only problem with
for,
that,
what is that?
the only problem with that is there are only a small fraction of the marketplace that are what they call indie friendly. They're just what everybody else is like. Oh, we get all the comics, Marvel and DC. They don't. They barely get anything beyond that. If it's an Image comic they might carry that on top of
Right.
the standard Marvels and DCs. It's shuffling. It is making changes now because now they have to go through 3 distributors to get their comics.
Yeah,
And
that's a whole different ball
and
game.
they're complaining about shipping costs because that chips into their profit margin. Um, I mean, one of the things that we're trying to do with any box is to try to provide them with reduced shipping costs so that they would be more amenable to trying to get books through us versus saying, oh wait, if it's carried by Diamond, we'll get it, type of a thing. Because they're only gonna they're looking at their bottom line, which I understand.
Oh yeah,
But
but that's why you're seeing a lot of indie people. Like I know specifically of one creator who is their own distribution service, and
mhm,
they deal with
well,
the local and different because their stuff sells. So
yeah, you might be
they're huh?
you might be talking about Alterna Comics.
No,
He
no,
does,
no, not them. This is a specific creator. I don't want to put people's business out there, but
okay,
they're actually, making money because they're the distributor. And frankly, I did that for a little bit.
yeah,
My first book, I sent 5 free copies to 6 or 7 stores nationwide. Like I
hmm
did like 2 in California, I think 2 in Georgia,
hmm
a couple in New York, and I just said here. Like I actually reached out to him. I'm like, hey, I'm just going to send it to you. I'm not asking for anything, but if you sell them and people want them, come back to me and we can talk. And it worked a little bit, but I didn't. Again, this is back when my first book where I didn't know anything about
hmm
anything. And so I didn't follow up with it like I should have. But then I did follow up with a couple, and they're like, yeah, we sold out. But we never heard from you again. So the creators, I think we as creators will, I mean, and on top of what you're doing with your distribution, and I know of a couple of other people that are trying to do the same thing
hmm
with Black creators having a distribution service. I do think again, I do think a lot of us are going to have to do it on our own. Some of us, it can work.
Well, when I got started, we had 15 distributors in this industry, and they slowly disappeared through attrition, for a lot of different reasons. It
Yeah.
wasn't about poor sales or anything. It's just that retailers would get savvy. They would go to one distributor, and then they would owe that distributor a few $1,000s, and the distributor said, "Well, we have to cut you off because you're not paying your bills." And then they jump to another distributor and do the same thing there. And then finally the distributors all got together and they formed their own agent, not agency. What's the right word? Uh, they gathered together and they started to talk to each other and said, okay, well that guy, blew his deal here, and then so now the other distributor was saying, well, we can't take you on because you still haven't paid your bills from distributor X.
Right.
Um,
Which is
and so.
why I personally feel
Mhm.
some hesitation towards any distributor. Like I know there are a couple of creators who are on to Diamond now and they're on da 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 da. And I'm just like, if I can't personally crank out a book every month, it makes no sense for me to do Diamond or
That's
any distributor, to be honest.
the truth on that is that Diamond has changed a lot. Again, everything's changed since I was again. I'm talking from that OG standpoint, but everything's changed. Diamond used to take everybody. They were completely committed to open access to the marketplace. I saw some material that was completely horrid that came through Diamond over the years, and then they started saying, "Well, this isn't selling, so we're going to be more specific as to what we carry." And then they came up with an edict that was, if your book doesn't sell X amount of copies,
Right.
we're not obligated to carry you. Now they're at a point now where they're saying you have to have uh, a minimum of a $2,500 marketing budget. You have to share with them how you're going to market your book. You have to show them that you have at least 5,000 Twitter followers.
Right. Yep.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's all great. That's the marketing side of the company, but that's not what Diamond's job is. Not to be your, to hold your hand and to learn that stuff. That's what you need to do as a publisher. But again, a lot of these guys aren't publishers. They're guys that create comic books that want to sell them online or in the stores, but they don't quite know how to do that.
Well,
And
they're
that's
also finding that they have to work more with indie guys now because
mhm.
of I think Marvel's with is it Random
Marvel,
House?
Marvel's with Random House.
And then
Random House.
DC is with somebody else, I
Lunar.
think.
Lunar.
Yeah. So they're kind of opening their doors a little bit more hesitantly, but they're trying to do it in a way that they don't just bring anybody on and any old person on.
Yeah, I haven't reviewed them in the last couple months, so I probably should take a look and see what they're doing now. But when I looked at that, it was, and I had been distributed through Diamond a few times for different projects, and now I talked to some of the OGs from Diamond who aren't with Diamond anymore, and they're like, "That's not my Diamond. This isn't the company that I worked for. They're making a lot more changes that are very abrasive to the marketplace and not welcoming to it. So there might be changes that have happened in the last few months that I'm not aware of, and I'm willing to take a look at that. But
Okay, Jamari, you got to. Did we lose you?
No, you didn't lose me.
All right, go ahead. Get one more, and then I want to give TC an opportunity to tell us what he's got coming up next, and then we'll wrap it up because I'm hungry.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and give him that time.
No, go. You don't have any other. You don't have another question.
Nothing pressing right now. I was listening. So
yeah, sometimes I know Jamari is working with me, and we are working to get Jamari's book out. Jamari's he's gonna make his debut writing with Visually Stoked Media.
Nice.
On a one shot. So I know a lot of the time he's listening to learn, because I'm always trying to tell him what I know, even while I'm learning. I mean, I've been doing.
Believe me, I've been in the game for many years, and I'm still learning.
I only got I've been doing this technically since about 2006, technically, but really, really into it for about 10 years now. So, I try to give everything I've learned from other people to Jamari. So, he'll listen from time to time. But if you had any, go ahead.
My thing is digital. That came out of nowhere. And I think in the beginning I was kind of resistant to it. I mean, that's why when I start talking about AI to people, they go, well, it's the devil. And I'm like, it's not that it's the devil. It's cheating. It's laziness. And so, I'm still trying to, kind of get my grasp on digital inking, and everything I color digitally. And my production work is all digital now because it's so much more expedient to do that.
Right.
I mean, I grew up with, we were taking the stuff with wax and rubber cement and pasting it on board. And now that's kind of archaic. It's you scan it in, mess around with it in Photoshop or Illustrator, and then put it out there. And I can do a lot more now because it's faster to do the stuff that I do because I know what I want. I know what I want it to look like, and it's just a matter of understanding the concept of it digitally to produce it.
All right. So we want to give you opportunity to tell us what's coming up with you, where you're going to be, what you got coming out. Let the folks know.
That's a really good question. One of the things we didn't touch on this, and because it's a personal thing, but about almost 3 years ago, just at the beginning of COVID, I got a wound on my foot and was amputated. And so as a result, I'm now at that point where I'm beginning to get back out into the world again and, relearning how to walk with a prosthetic. Most of the time when you see me, and that's going to continue for at least another year, I'm in a wheelchair. And so, I've been dealing with those personal issues in addition to working on my comic book projects. And this is so comics right now is, other than the occasional party caricature event, is all I do.
Okay.
And so I've got a ton of projects in the pipeline, but they're at various states of completion, so I can't really talk about many of them now. But the books that we put out recently have been my focus. Like I said, Alien Summer, which is Let's see if I can show you. There you
There you go.
go.
Yeah, yeah.
Is like one of my current favorites that we put out, and it's very Casper Richie Rich kind of thing, alien princess from another planet, and she has no clue about Earth customs, and so hijinks ensue. Um, and there's that, and of course the Body and Soul graphic novel that's almost ready to come out. Then following that, I have my book called Zephyr, which is the beginning of our new superhero line. And she's 17 years old and kind of a legacy superhero character. She's the fastest woman on the planet. Um, so there's characters I created back when I was 15 years old that we're going to be bringing back into this new world. And so it's a lot of those old sensibilities, but in today's world, and see how that goes about. And we also have a new book that is in development and is close to having a first issue come out, called Secret Psychos. And the basic concept of it is what would you do if you had superpowers for one day? You can only have one power, and it's only good for 24 hours. What would you do? What power would you want? And what would you do with it? So each issue is someone that gets these abilities, and it shows what they would do. It's kind of an anthology story, but not quite, because there's a subplot that goes with this with the thing, as far as there's this company that's giving these people these powers. Why are they doing this? What do they get out of doing this? And what's their alternative? What's their ulterior motive? Um, and it leads you into a larger story. But the thing with the comic, and this is the thing that I'm trying to discuss with people online, is it's episodic. So if you came into issue 15, you don't need to know issues 1 through 14 to be able to appreciate issue 15, because that's its own story. But if you got the other 15 issues, you got a bigger story, and that's how comics should be written, in my opinion, because every comic book should be someone's first comic book. And if you're selling comics at a convention and they go, okay, great, I'll buy issues 1 through 9 of your book, that's great. But if they look at it and they go, oh, I got to buy issues 1 through 9, well, maybe I'll come back. And now you just lost a sale because they felt like they had to buy 9 issues and not just one.
I usually tell people just get the first one. If you want the first one, just if you like it, come on back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I usually always do that for the most part.
Yeah.
But I always am like, hey, there's a cliffhanger, and then they're like, all right, I'll take the second. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, okay, all right. Are you going to be in any cons coming up?
Well, there's a book fair that's coming. I don't have the date. I'm trying to find it. It's this month, in New Haven. It's part of the Culturally Lit. The same person that did Diaspora Con. They're doing
Okay,
they're doing a
okay.
book fair, and I think you're invited to that too, if I'm correct. I
What
think they
month
wanted
is that?
that this is this month. I'm still trying to find out the details. I haven't reached her yet to find out what date it is. There's also a grand reopening of a comic shop on the 22nd in Manchester. They have a store in Enfield, but they're closing that store, and they're moving to Manchester with a store that's infinitely bigger, supposedly.
Really?
And that store is actually not a small comic shop. Because it's not just comics. He does gaming there. He does pop vinyl and all that stuff. So it's a pretty big storefront that he had, and he's got a bigger bigger place now that's in Manchester, and it's called what's the name of the store? You know what? I don't remember.
Well, shoot, DM me that because I might stop by that if I can, if I'm here.
Okay. Yeah.
That weekend.
Okay.
Okay.
And then then there's a few other conventions coming, but we're still kind of dancing as to whether we have to make them, like Plastic City, up in.
I'll see. I'll be there.
Oh, okay. We may be attending that as well. We did it last year, and it was really fun. I enjoyed it. I like Keith. He's a good guy. He has his own comic out called Mighty Mascots, which is another favorite of mine.
Okay.
I tend to skew towards the less serious comics simply because they're fun, they're easy to read. I don't there's no obligation, beyond like maybe an issue at a time.
Right.
Um, but I also like the serious stuff. I grew up reading X-Men like everybody else did, and all the Dark Knight Returns and all that as well. And found some, one of my favorite writers is Alan Moore. You can't get deeper than that, you know. But sometimes you just don't have time to delve into
Right.
a deep story. And I can read that one and done, boom, boom, move on.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Well, thank you so much, man. Thank you for stopping by. I'm sorry for all the technical glitches and issues.
stuff happens,
That
man. It was good
yeah.
to be here.
Well,
And
it's
great conversation.
Appreciate your time.
it's always good to talk to you, man. And listen, if you're interested in any of the books that he talked about, website is below, unitedcomicworks.com. Check them out. If you see, if you're in the Connecticut area, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're also on Facebook, and you can buy the books on eBay as well under IndieBox if you look for IndieBox.
All right. So you heard it from the man. If you're in Connecticut area at any of these events, you'll see them. Hopefully we cross paths again. I don't know when that'll be. Probably Plastic City. Unless if you're not doing Terrificon or Springfield Comic Con.
Well, my thing is because of my medical issues, I can't do a multi-day show.
I got you.
At least not right now.
Right.
And so, Con was like 3 days, and I haven't been able to make the last few years of it. So, I'm working towards that, though. I am.
Well, hopefully, I'll see you at Plastic City. Hopefully.
Okay.
Thank you again for stopping by. We appreciate you. And thank you all for anybody who actually followed us from stream to stream to stream. If you didn't, don't worry about it. I'm going to try and repost this again so that people can watch it. And stop by next week, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, for another episode of Stoked Podcast, Creative Talk of Creative People. Y'all have a great weekend. If you are in the New Jersey area, come check me out. If you're at blurredcon.com, I'm so jealous of you, but have a great time. And I'll see y'all next week. And thank you. Have a great week.